Hi everyone, Robert Cook here. Today I'm going to be talking about the fundamentals of building dashboards inside of AMI. So first off, you have a style that you can choose. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it as the default style. And now at this point, I've just logged in. I have really no layout. And so basically you see this simple desktop background, right? Now what I have though is this layout editor button. And what that means is that I can switch into this configuration mode where I can start to build layouts. And generally the way this works is certain people are permissioned to build layouts, and then they can publish those layouts out to other people who then view those layouts. I have rights to build layouts, which is a good thing because that's what we're talking about today. So first thing is under Windows, you basically have a few options that show up once I click this button. So we can say Window, New Window, and then from the new window we have certain features available. So we have this green button here, and we have this green button up here. This green button basically lets us control this panel, which is a blank panel, and then this little green button up here lets me control the window itself. Okay, so I'm going to take this panel and I'm basically going to go ahead and split that. So that's just creating some additional real estate, and all of this stuff can be nested and done recursively, so you can create as rich of a dashboard as you want. And then same thing with tabs. So I can go ahead and also add tabs as well, and I can add as many tabs as I'd like. So very quickly, at a high level, we have three different components that we use to create layouts. We have windows, we have dividers, and we have tabs. And really with those three building blocks, you can make some very, very complex and rich environments. I'm going to go through each one of those in turn in terms of how they're set up. So the window, first off, when I click this green button, we have the type of window. We can either choose regular, which basically says this is just a normal window that looks like this. We can also say we want something that's maximized with no header. So when I choose maximize no header, now it fills up, and this actually starts to look more like a traditional dashboard where you come in and it really isn't in like a desktop type of environment. And then the third thing you can do is you can actually say hidden. So when you do hidden, what that means is that normally when you say window, you can see the window, the actual options show up. If you make it hidden, then really to the end user, they can't get to this window manually. So theoretically, if this window was hidden like this, then when a user came in, they don't know that window's even there. So that's useful for things like pop-up dialogues or something along those lines. Okay, gonna go ahead and go back into this editor mode, go to our window that we've created, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and turn it back to a regular window. Okay, so now let's talk about dividers for a second. So a divider by default, even if I'm not in configuration mode, I can move this divider around, do whatever I want with it. But we have some features which let you more or less lock this stuff down. So first off, I could say under the style, maybe I want to lock the divider. So I'm going to lock the divider to the left. So what that really means is that while I in configuration mode can still move it around, basically once I leave, now it can't be updated, right? So the end user has no ability to move this divider, yet in configuration mode, I have that ability. And note that it's locked to the left. So basically that means no matter what we do or how we size things, that window stays locked to the left. Naturally, if you lock it to the right, then basically as I resize the window, you'll see that changing. So style, and now we could say locked to the right. And basically now as I start to move this around, you can see it's actually maintaining this width, and this width is what's dynamically changing. Okay, so that is how more or less very high level how you can use dividers. And then we also have the ratio as well. And then you can set the size of the divider. So actually sometimes having a 0 pixel or 1 pixel divider is a nice way of dividing things up. And then also we have the ability to do snap. So what snap means is that when an end user comes in, if they double click on that divider, where should it snap? By default, it doesn't snap at all, but let's go ahead and say we said snap to the left. Then basically now end user comes in, and if they double click on that, it's going to go ahead and snap it to the left. Let's go to style. Let's turn off the locked and go ahead and do that. There we go. So it locks it to the left now. Okay. Okay, so that really covers, well, certainly doesn't cover it, but it gives you an idea of how dividers operate. So now let's talk about tabs for a second. Tabs, first off, the way you configure tabs is by going to the green button in the corner up here. Under Style, you can see there's a lot of ways to set up your tabs. So first off, you could say you want to hide them. So this is an interesting way of now making it so that you can only switch these panels programmatically, which we'll talk about in other videos. But basically, the user doesn't really realize their tabs. But to us, when we're building these dashboards, we can think of it as having multiple panels we can switch through inside here. So I'm going to go ahead and show that again. We can say allow undocking. So when we say yes to that, basically what that means now is an end user can come in, click on this and say undock. And now that they've undocked it, they can go move this tab and do something else with it. And then they can actually even use multi-monitor support now. So once you allow undocking, that's a great way of saying, people want to be able to tear out those tabs and set it up for multiple monitors. So let's go back to the style again. And then we basically also have the ability to decide where the tabs live. So you could say, I want the tabs on the bottom, I want the tabs on the top, maybe I want the tabs to be vertical and on the right and on the bottom, right? So now your tabs are sitting down there, something like that. Regardless, you can set all that up. So I'm going to go ahead and put it back on the top and on the left. And by the way, I'll check these buttons. So this really says just go back to inherited, which I'll talk about in a second. And that really means pick it up from the high level configuration. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that as is. So again, very, very simple way to get you started on setting up tabs. If you want to rename or edit those tabs, you can click this green button. Once you click that green button, that brings up a whole set of features. So I could go ahead, rename this tab. Go ahead and submit that. I can go ahead and delete the tabs. I can say which one is the default tab. So when a user logs in, that's the tab that's selected by default. And then you can insert tabs to the left and the right, move them all around, all of that fun stuff. So that more or less covers the tabs, the dividers, and the windows, which again are really the three building blocks for more or less how you build this stuff. Another thing I want to cover today with regards to the layout is, interestingly, all of these panels, everything's nested. So for example, this divider has a left and a right, and that right contains another divider, which has a top and a bottom. And that bottom is a tab, which contains two inner panels, right? So the whole thing has a hierarchy to it. And this hierarchy behind the scenes is represented by JSON. So for example, if I wanted to grab the JSON that reflects this panel right here, which is basically this tab with these two sub panels, I'm going to go ahead, I can say export highlighted panels, and this is the JSON that represents those panels. So I've copied that into my clipboard. Hypothetically, I say new window, and then I say import, and if I paste that, basically that's a very simple way of now copying this panel over to there, right? So these are more or less identical at that point. And this can work all the way out. So if I export from this level, it's basically going to capture this whole thing, export highlighted panels. I can copy this. So now, just to mention also with all of these panels, you can always say add panel to the right, left, whatever. So I'm going to say right, and now I can paste inside there. And then basically you're going to see it's going to take that entire thing and nest it inside of that guy as well. Okay. So with that said, now I'm going to go back and look at, let's see what I want to talk about, the style manager. So the style manager is where you can actually start to set this up so that from an inheritance standpoint, you don't have to go through and do the styling of each individual piece. So very simply in this case, all I want to do is go and change the divider color. So I click on the divider and I'm going to say, I want a default size and I want a default color of this red. Go ahead and choose, let's say, a nice blue color like that everyone can see. Okay, so basically that just went ahead and now set this inheritance. So set it within the inheritance tree. And so just to be clear how that works, if I click on style, we can see this is inheriting from layout default. If I say jump to that style, then that's what the style looks like that I just set up. Okay, so that's another way to get there in the inheritance tree. Worth mentioning that when I go File, Save As, this saves the dashboard I've been working on, so we'll call this Demo 1. And all this is really doing is creating a file for under my user account that's backed by the JSON. And so now if I go back and I say Open Demo 1, basically it loads that JSON, and that's how we have this particular dashboard. So I think this gives you a good idea, a good starting point for basically how you can build these dashboards, etc. Worth mentioning that we have AMI script, which basically lets you do all of this programmatically, but often it's obviously a lot easier just to drag and drop to create these things. And one more thing I will leave us off with is panels, HTML panels, right? So really all of this real estate we're creating here is because at some point we want to actually put something worthwhile inside here, like either a form that someone can fill in or a visualization or a chart or something along those lines. So I'm going to go ahead and say create HTML panel. This gives me some real estate where I can now add some widgets. I can go ahead and say add a field, so I could choose like a text field here. I can go ahead and fill in all the parameters around that. And then I could also go ahead and say maybe I want to create a button. And then you have a script that you can set up that will run for that button. I'm not going to get into script today, but just to give you a quick example, if I enter something in like this, submit that. So now I've got my button and I've got some text. And if I click that button, basically runs that script that I just put in. Also, with all of these guys, if you go in and you can basically set their alignment. So by default, they're aligned to the left and the top. I could say, maybe I want to align it to the right, something along those lines. So now you'll see as I move this guy, the button is kind of locked to the right, but this text field stays locked to the left. So we've done a lot of work in terms of allowing you to configure how this thing should react as windows change size, etc. Okay, so that covers it for today. Thank you, and look forward to talking again. Bye.